If I didn't know Mark, I don't think I'd know what a PEO was.
Yeah.
And I'm a business guy and talk to thousands of business guys every year.
Yeah.
So every year, I mean, our company just talks to business people.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd ever know what a PEO was if I wasn't friends with Mark.
It's amazing too, where because there's so many nuances to a PEO and different types of PEO models, and when they know the difference, right, compared to competing types of services, the financial argument, the operational argument, always is on the side of a PEO. Over all these years as we saw PEOs evolve, I have yet to hear a fair argument, whether it's fiscal objection, an operational objective, as to why a hotel, why that small business owner that's taken that new franchise, why do you want to be the employer of record? What do you accomplish? Right? I've never heard when they know better on the PEO model. What's the argument? The argument you usually hear is what Mark and the team and our groups would usually hear, which is just a misguided misunderstanding, lack of knowledge about PEO. They say, well, I want to be the employer because this is my baby. This is my brand. This is my culture. It's my name on the door. It's the franchise brand on the door, on the wall, etc. But that's speaking of the employer of the work site, right? Your brand, your culture, right? Your business, your people. That doesn't change with a PEO. I'm talking about a routing and account number from which the wages are paid. What do you accomplish by absorbing that? If you're 100% accurate in doing it, then congratulations. There's not a penny of additional revenue. And if you're the least bit inaccurate in doing that in-house, then but congratulations, you're liable. So really, what's the win in that? I never understood the argument when they know better. Why do you want to be the employer of record? Right. So I think a lot of times when we beat out competitors, rightfully so, when they're preaching about outsourcing, outsource it, right? And do it the proper way, right? Do what you do best, outsource the rest, and that means do not be the employer of record. Unless you could give me an argument how that's going to really benefit your brand, your culture, your people. How is it going to help you?
What's the franchisor, what stops them from choosing a PEO and working with a partner and kind of outsourcing that? What's the thing that, because they know they ought to. You said they ought to, and they know they ought to, and then they don't. What's the thing that stops them?
Well, there could be maybe three answers to that. Number one, the franchising space is a niche market, even though it represents, and it's at the core of the macroeconomic. When you combine and you aggregate all those small businesses together, you're talking franchises.
How many of all the businesses in the U.S., and I don't know if you know this stat, I'm just curious, what percentage of that approximately is franchise?
Well, you're speaking about over 35% of just the shops on Main Street, et cetera. And you cross by and you go by this hotel and I pull up and you pass by your McDonald's, your Wendy's, et cetera. Those are all franchised businesses. Franchising is a business model that allows you to be in business by yourself, for yourself, but not by yourself. You're buying into a brand, right? So that you could have a higher probability of success over time. Right? Franchising cares about protecting an integrity of the brand. And there's a lot of nuance associated with that because that franchise owner on that street does not, that's the person's own business. That's their equity. That's her or his own business. Those are her or his employees, et cetera. And the franchisor cannot engage in anything regarding that employer-employee relationship of a business that's rightfully her or his. Yep. Therefore, your first answer to the question, right, which is the franchisors, because they're concerned about joint employer liability, sometimes would say, I don't want to recommend a particular track because I don't want to give the impression, with the best of intentions, that we are guiding that employer-employee relationship, hence open us up to joint employer liability. it's a misguided argument, right? When they learn that it has no bearing on that, right?
Yeah.
But that could be, one example. Why number two, why wouldn't they recommend a PEO, especially the first PEO, the first digital PEO running off of a platform as a service ever created for franchises, which is Infiniti HR? Why would they not recommend the PEO when they know the difference, when they understand that this prevents joint employer liability?
Right.
Right, helps enrich the brand, helps better protect the brand and therefore all their franchisees. There is no financial or operational reason why they wouldn't do that. Right. Number three, I think, can be an overgeneralized answer, but it's a fair question, which is these are big ships, right? It takes sometimes a long time to change a course, to adapt to change with a big ship, right? And so, Mark and I laugh all the time. We're a speedboat and we could change directions and adapt to changing times fairly quickly. When you're dealing with international franchise brands, right, that are used to their own, suppliers, their own process, it could take longer with the best of intentions to adapt to changing times. Some of the hubs, some of the Zors that we've been working with, we started, building those relationships almost 10 years ago. Right, and reaping the rewards of that, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. So it can take time, and that's not necessarily the most fair answer as much as it's just true. You're dealing with national brands that are very protective, rightfully so, about who they use and when. Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah,
To that point, there's a lot of our competitors that actually will sell the payroll piece and sell against the PEO.
Yeah.
So these large payroll companies,
Yeah.
they own PEOs, but their other division, the payroll-only sales force, will sell against PEOs
Yeah.
like us.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funny dynamic because, to the point of the big ship,
Yeah.
they're still in that mode of payroll, which is 1980s.
That's right.
Right. PEO is just an evolution of a payroll company where
Yep.
we're using the aggregation model to get better rates for insurance products, benefits,
That's
all the
right.
great things we're doing now with cyber, the joint liability insurance.
Yep.
So there's so many things that the aggregation model offers to a small business, and it's just amazing that there's still payroll companies out there just schlepping checks. I mean, you can go to Bank of America and pay 50 cents a check if you want.
It's so fascinating. It's 100% accurate, and I take it to the point where I find it intellectually dishonest that payroll companies pushing tech and payroll only services to national brands that have to protect the integrity of their brand, protect the employer-employee relationship, knowing full well that they do have a PEO service and it's not being provided to those franchise brands. Why? And back to one of your original questions. Well, that owner on Main Street that we passed going up to this hotel, right? That's her or his business, right? That's that person's control over that territory for that brand. And that means they might have only 20 people. Maybe they only have 40 people working for them. And there's higher turnover, lower average, right, aggregate wages. And that's not attractive to a traditional PEO model that are run as divisions of publicly traded multinational payroll companies, right? They want the bigger accounts to justify PEO, justify aggregation for that. I find that laughable at best, right? When you combine the franchises together, not so little anymore, right? Isn't that practicing what we preach in PEO in our industry, which is to aggregate power in numbers, protecting the power numbers, protecting the power of brands, right? That works for Infiniti HR exponentially. When you could scale a PEO, use true aggregation, to Mark's point, empower the brands in aggregate, when you put those together, that's not small anymore. And that's I think, an outdated thinking by competitors that have missed the opportunity to be able to aggregate for franchises. I think it's kind of consistent with the readings that we've done in training sessions together. Who moved my cheese, and what happens when you don't adapt to changing times, right? So when we're able to create a model that was designed to accommodate those that would otherwise be pushed for traditional payroll only services, that you and I can do on Excel if we really wanted to. There's really no victory in that, right? There's an opportunity when they know better and provide continuous education that they're in much better hands with PEO, with aggregation, when that PEO is scaled appropriately to support them.
Mark, you and I were talking, and I don't think I fully understood this until you like dropped this bomb on me. There's like this liability, this employer liability conversation that most business owners, franchisors don't really understand. Explain that, how the PEO protects the brand, the franchisor, the business from all the liability and risk associated with just being an employer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the meat and the potatoes of the PEO. And by the very nature of the contract, the PEO is a co-employer, so we're the employer of record.
Yep.
So you do all the good stuff. You get to hire, fire, do the day-to-day management. The PEO is responsible for procuring all taxes under their federal ID number, under typically the state ID number. So you have unemployment, all that stuff, and then compliance as well. So dealing with not only proactive measures of hiring the right people, making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in employment regulations. You go to California, it's like another country for labor law. We have specific people designed just in California to deal with those situations. So it's much more than just shoveling paperwork and dealing with the everyday minutia of employment. It's truly taking that liability. So when you get sued, I'm in bed with you for that lawsuit. So whether you do something dumb or the employee does something dumb or they hire a smart lawyer and figure out something to mess with you on, we are truly liable with that situation, and we have all the resources to help battle that. Whether it be our insurance company's lawyers or our internal staff will help you, navigate through those issues.
What's interesting is I think you mentioned something too, like the Republic of California. I'm a Californian, by the way. I think when you start going multi-state, I think that is where the PEO makes a lot of sense. Like if you're in one state, it's like, okay, we can learn that. But you start adding 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 and going national, it becomes impossible for any one human or any one company to understand the nuances of the different states. How do you guys do that? I'm just curious, like how do you guys manage the nuances of all the different states?
I could answer it, I think, by piggybacking on Mark's point in the true spirit of aggregation. When we speak about that business owner, right? I always look at this from the bigger picture. I talk to a hotel owner. I talk to that small business on Main Street, right? You have to use some type of payroll service today.
Yep.
Most likely, you're going to comply. Otherwise, you'll be shut down with federal and state regulations.
Yep.
You're going to have to properly insure the people, mandated by state and federal law with very few exceptions. You're probably going to want to retain the best talent you have as well. And you're probably going to want to offer some type of benefits program or something to be able to show your support as an employer. You're going to have to juggle a lot of that. And as you grow, you're probably going to have to hire somebody too. That's going to be doing some paperwork, etc. So why are you doing that as independent variables working separately from each other? Right? Why do you have payroll in this and HR in that? And it doesn't matter to me if you're just only in California, if you're only in Arizona, if you're an enterprise that has multi-state exposure across 5 different states. Why do you want to do that? What does that accomplish at the end of the day, right? If you are doing those as independent variables working separately from each other, you're not leveraging the law of large numbers. You're not utilizing the ability that Mark's talking about to put that into a package, to bundle that and save. You can't watch your favorite ball game without seeing commercials from insurance companies telling you to bundle and save, and 15 minutes can save you 15% of your car insurance. And there's very good reasoning for that based on mathematical principles of the law of large numbers. What Mark described is that when you aggregate it together, we create scale. Yeah. We could do it more efficiently at a less expensive cost and pass that savings on to the end client. Whereas the economies of scale of that hotel in Sacramento or the fast food shop that we passed coming up to this property, what economies of scale are you leveraging there? There's very good reason why that big tub of ketchup at Costco is less expensive than the local grocery store, but it's not Costco being nice to you. It costs less to manufacture in bulk, right? You could lower the per unit cost of an item more efficiently when you package it in bulk.
Yeah.
We just simply do it more efficiently with labor costs. which is the biggest piece of the pie. Well, even when you look at the lease on a building, etc., when you look at the cost to pay for talent, part or full-time, in any capacity, in any enterprise, that is your biggest operational expense. And if you're not adapting to changing times and increases in cost to provide a wage and all the bells and whistles, and Mark and I talk about constantly that you have to do just to comply to provide that wage. If you are left at your own economies of scale of what you are able to provide and negotiate with carriers and negotiate and manage the complexities and the nuance and the administrative burdens that you would have as an employer, which has nothing to do with increasing revenue, but just so that you can operate, right?
Yeah.
There's no mathematical reason or operational reason why an aggregator would not create that economies of scale a lot more efficiently than you can do on your own, right? So when you pool people together, you create efficiencies. That efficiencies results in a lower per unit cost of that individual to employ. We pass that on to the client. The client enjoys greater efficiency, greater flexibility, and they're able to focus on the business that they love, right? I don't think, in conclusion, any business owner, whether you're a hotel or that fast food shop, would say, I went into business so I can do all of this myself. Conversely, to your original question about franchising, they go to a franchise because they say, here's a proven model, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Right. But because of the nuance and because a franchisor is not the employer, they have to say, use a supplier for that, right? And that's where we would come in to make it more efficient.
Yeah. Talk about the benefits in the insurance piece. I think there's a lot of value in that large market, access that you guys have. And I'm just curious what that looks like for the average customer that comes to Infiniti.
Yeah, it's certainly proven that if you're under 10 employees, it's difficult to get underwriting on specifically healthcare. What the PEO has packaged together, at least in Infiniti's world, is that we have all the voluntary programs that surround benefits. So you have your dental, your life insurance, your vision, you have disability products, you have a full 401k plan. So all these things a small company can tap into right away, whether the employees want to pay for it, extra stuff, or the employer says, you know what, we're going to allocate some benefit dollars monthly. You go choose. The PEO offers almost like a little marketplace. As a 10-person group, it's very difficult to go out and find 5 brokers to put all these things together and do it economically. So the PEO really offers that benefit solution for a small to medium-sized firm that it's very difficult to go out and get on your own. Healthcare specifically, we have a couple different programs. And it's interesting because if you have a group that is, we'll call it fairly healthy, you can generally get 25% off a typical market rate when you go to like a Blue Cross or a United or a Aetna. We have a solution that rewards you for health, being healthy. So with the wellness programs we've designed around it, it's a really unique strategy so that we're trying to get everybody in the universe of let's talk about longevity. Let's not wait to go to the doctor. So these wellness programs are designed to keep a healthy workforce, which is proven to be more productive. Everybody wins. And it's just a matter of educating the community on this is available to you. We don't have to be sick people anymore and wait for the diseases and then go to the doctor and then, the health. We're not a healthy nation right now. So Infiniti's taking a stance where we want to be healthier with our community. So we're pushing wellness. We're rewarding you for being healthy by giving you good premiums. So it's that aggregation and then also the wellness component that really, I think, our unique strategy going forward is going to be pretty incredible.
You were going to add something, Danny. What were you going to say?
That's such a perfect point, too, because the math backs up exactly what Mark just mentioned. The rock in a pond theory, right? The ability for carriers to assess risk. Most savvy business owners are astutely aware of this, particularly to Mark's comment on the value of our health insurance programs, our benefit programs. If I'm a business owner with 10 people, 30 people, 100 people, let's just take 1 out of 10, loss questionnaires, health history, etc. Variables that good people cannot directly control themselves, mind you, right? As a requirement on the carrier for an ability to assess risk.
Yeah.
And they are looked at in the lens of that one entity. One loss out of 10 or one probability out of 10, it makes a ripple. That's 10%. Conversely, just for illustrative purposes, take that same rock, 1 out of 10, throw it into a pond of not 10 people, but why don't you throw it in a pond of tens of thousands of people? Now go a step further to help carriers understand, right, and speak their language in the law of large numbers of how they assess risk. Let's say that one company, that one franchisee, that fast food restaurant or that small economy limited hotel property has a renewal for their health insurance. They are renewed based on their ability to assess risk on 10 people, 1 out of 10. And they get a renewal the year later. The honeymoon rate's over. And that renewal is going to be 20%, let's say. And the owner's going to say, I can't afford this, right? And I'm going to go to another carrier instead. Well, I would argue that the original carrier that insured them is going to live to see another day, isn't going to necessarily bend over backwards to provide the greatest plans or the most flexibility and choices that a large enterprise corporation might be able to. One of the nice things about large enterprise corporations, they tend to offer better benefits, better packages to their people to attract and retain top talent. People don't necessarily go to work for large companies because of all the freedom and flexibility they get, right? But they have good packages, right? They have good benefits, etc. So use that analogy or use that illustration. Take the same rock and throw it into a pond of 20,000 people. What about renewal? If we look at aggregation in this argument, if I'm a carrier and I have the ability to work with Infiniti HR and have a diverse cohort of small businesses and to look at that opportunity in aggregate, doesn't it make a little bit of a different conversation to say, we're not going to look at maybe just one company by itself anymore. And if you renew us at 20%, we'll pull it and go to somebody else instead. And now that's going to affect potentially tens of thousands of people and different options to a competing carrier. Does that change the equation a little bit? Does that get their attention a little bit better? And power numbers, protecting power brands. And I like that very much. Just an illustration of how aggregation could help that very small company to the company with hundreds of people receiving full benefits, full health insurance programs, etc.
I was curious your guys' thoughts, because what I'm hearing is on the PEO side anyways, it's an effective way to have a small business be able to have the benefits of a really large business at a reduced cost and with people who really know what they're doing. So it allows a smaller business person to compete for talent in this market. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but the market for talent is just, it's super tight. It's hard to find great people. The people that are out there are like, I don't really want to work. It's a really interesting time right now. What are your thoughts about how you guys like effectively help your businesses compete for talent?
Well, I think I mentioned before, we are in a situation where COVID has really magnified the situation of where do we get talent now? Because people are at home. We've benefited tremendously from it because we always had everybody hired in either Scottsdale or Maryland, where we're corporately located. Now, all of a sudden, in the last 2 years, we've hired close to 10 people that are in other states, whether it be Atlanta, Florida, New York, California. Yeah. We're tapping into talent that we never even went out to go and look at before. Yep. So I think that's really benefited us. And I don't know if that is benefiting nationally the community, but we look at this as a really nice opportunity where we're able to, because we've embraced the blended workforce, get all these amazing folks, and they don't have to be where we are anymore. So it's been a really cool experience and journey for the last 2 years. So I'm excited about the future, just because we've changed the dynamic of the way we think about the workforce.
I'm guessing this conversation is a huge conversation for the franchisors and franchisees, because the typical workforce is in that it's a very tight workforce. So what are your thoughts around that?
Franchisor cannot guide the employer-employee relationship of those franchisees, and yet those franchisees, to our point before, look to a franchisor for resources. And how am I going to find talent, to Mark's point? How do I know what the proper way is to pay that talent, to retain that talent? And there's such a evolution happening in franchising right now, where suppliers who can provide aggregate solutions, bundled packages, outsourced solutions that affect the entire ecosystem of employment, not just one variable working separately from each other. That's very attractive to a franchise, and prevent the misguided arguments of joint employer liability.
Yep.
What we look at when we outsource recruitment services, and we are able to bundle up those type of services as part of this solution for them, it makes that franchisee's ability to find talent easier, faster, more efficient,
And keep them.
right? And it helps the brand tout that efficiency in aggregate for their own ability to find more
Sell.
investment in the future and sell more territories. And look at what we've done in our ability to empower franchisees through our suppliers to be able to ramp up faster than other grand openings that you've seen before in the past, and retain people better and control the labor costs more efficiently. That plays for the business owner herself or himself, and it plays for the franchise brand.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, and I want you guys to answer this. Where did all the employees go? Like, where are they? Why are they not in, like, applying for jobs? Like, why is unemployment so low? Like, I'm just curious your perspective.
You want me to take that?
I mean, I think it's a
great question.
It's an economics play that these people, for the most part, have been handed some cash, and they're either doing smart things with it, or they're sitting on it and paying their bills, and they don't really need to work. Or maybe it's the psychological thing of, I don't want to actually be out in public and being with people. Because you have your device. Most people that are younger, they don't need anything else. So, I don't know if I can answer that question on a general sense, but I feel like that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's an interesting psychology to this, where we reference these surveys, millennials and Gen Zs, and that have the power to change the world, and they will, and the time's going to come, and there's a desire to not go down the path that their parents went down and their grandparents went down, and working for corporate America, or maybe creating their own franchise brand, maybe creating their own enterprise in the future, and they may have embarked on that particular journey that takes them out of that equation, to Mark's point, and you see a lot of that taking shape in the micro level, and even on bigger types of ventures that eventually get their own funding and use their own enterprise. In many ways, it's interesting to watch. I also think that it's arguably, if you look at the numbers, I think that's also temporary. The Federal Reserve raised it another quarter point, I think, yesterday, and there is a little bit of a softening there. One of the top answers from the aforementioned millennials and Gen Z of what they wanted most from an employer, approximately, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, Mark and I were talking about, they want freedom and flexibility. That was the number one a goal, and rightfully so. I think that's wonderful, right? And we've been really proud, right, to do this with our own team members and give them that freedom and flexibility, right? To not be proverbially micromanaged. That resonates with them, and fair enough. Same survey goes out. We just got some of the results about 2 weeks ago. What's the number one reason? What do they want, right? They want stability. That's an interesting sign of the times as the macroeconomic environment may be shifting a little bit, where you see that tight labor market, low unemployment, which is wonderful, right? But you see franchises in particular being astutely aware that the pendulum is a little bit moving, right? And if the labor market softens a little bit more, you see that different dynamic play into the psychology. So I think these things can be cyclical, and I think they're in many ways, it's a phenomenon, right, that you've seen with such a tight labor market, right? And but I also think that when you have a good brand, when you have good people, when you have great people who want to dream things that never were and ask why not, and have a dedication to help empower them, then when those opportunities are made aware, they will find you with the proper support, with the proper infrastructure, and we're delighted to provide the infrastructure.
Yesterday, you were saying that you guys are doing almost $1 billion in payroll for the year, which is great. It's a crazy number. what are you seeing with all these businesses and franchisees out there in terms of like economics? Are you seeing paying more money? Are you seeing their sales go up? Like, I'm just kind of curious if you get a pulse from your business perspective, having so many, different kinds of companies and payroll and all this stuff. What are you seeing in the economic sense right now?
Yeah, our business model is a good indication of the economy, really.
Exactly.
Because when COVID hit initially, we were down 60% in those first 2 months, and that was scary.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing now is more of a steady growth in and around the 10 to 15% mark from just the pure wages.
Yeah.
And that might not necessarily people hiring more. It's giving better bonuses or giving raises in small increments. And that's what we're seeing over the last 12 to 16 months.
Just a steady growth.
Yeah.
Incremental that matches what it was before prior to.
Oh yeah. It's definitely above and beyond where we started before COVID.
And to piggyback on it, which is one of my, it's one of the single most frustrating aspects what we see for National Alliance sales is that, and I told Mark, we should be at 1.6, right, instead of 1. And a lot of that is, we're just a microcosm of that bigger picture when we're talking about the aggregate payroll volume, right? But when we look at our very own platform as a service that tracks the BLS and sees what our clients are doing as a representation of those sectors, whether it's
BLS,
a Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? Yeah,
all these numbers.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, we're really acronym happy in PEO world. Yeah,
There's a BS in it.
Yeah. But it's how come we're not at 1.6 billion instead of 1? Leisure and hospitality, very important part of franchising and our national sales division. Well, they're still fighting with pre-COVID-19 levels, right? RevPAR isn't as much. The workforce isn't as high as it was prior there. It's been a slow progression back. You see the payroll volume relatively higher, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been consistent. You would see it go up by 2, down by 1, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.
It's a very odd, it's been odd when you look at it from a graphical perspective, right? You see, okay, we're coming out of that, and then maybe we're not, right? And then the next month, et cetera. But I think, in times of relative economic uncertainty and challenging times, when businesses are trying to get back to what they are truly capable of achieving and what a PEO brings during those type of times.
Yeah.
Right? Founded the PEO at a time of the greatest economic recession in modern American history, right? And imagine what we're going to be able to accomplish to boost up that 1.0 number to really what we're really truly capable of achieving, right? So I think that when we start to see changes in the economy a bit and the franchises could put more people back on payroll, that easily goes from 1 to 1.6, and you really get off to the races of discovering what we can achieve. And I think that's a beautiful thing because you could grow organically with a lot of those brands.
What's wild about this time, and I think you said this, like you think things are going really well, and then you get some bad news, and
Next month, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't it's really difficult right now to forecast, and I don't think I've ever lived in a time like this where it's almost like the windshield in the economy has this little tiny hole. It's dark outside. It's raining,
Yeah.
and we're all wondering,
Yeah.
where it's gonna go. So I'm Mark. What's your thoughts about where the economy is gonna go over the next 6 to 12 months? What are you thinking? How's it feeling? You're a business owner. Just come from that perspective.
Well, because we play in the real estate space,
Yeah.
that's to me the biggest kind of not stress, but I see my friends that own these real estate companies, and that you could see it in their eyes. They're scared.
Yeah.
And
Why? Wait. Back up. Why are they? What's happening for the real estate industry that is causing that fear?
I think primarily the rates. We have just been so spoiled. I bought my first house in 1997, and I thought 8.1 was a steal. And so my perspective's a little different maybe from some of the younger folks that are just spoiled with 3-4% rates.
2.
Yeah.
2.
So I think that's the main driver of the that mentality of they don't know when it's going to go down, if it will. So we'll have to get used to that. We don't play in that same world with Infiniti. So what we're more concerned about is what I talked about before, is the healthcare piece of our business is the biggest challenge to address. And I feel like wellness is the way to attack it from a level of getting everybody healthy and getting everybody in a space where they don't have to have those 25% renewals anymore. So I'm fearful for people that are just in real estate, because I feel like that is going to be rough waters for the next 2 to 3 years. And you're going to have to buckle down. And I think you said it yesterday, where people are parking their money in other places and just to hang out for 2 or 3 years until things get better. I don't want to be in that position. I want to be in the driver's seat. We have multiple business opportunities that we're always getting involved in. So it's not real estate, it'll be something else. So, that little window you talked about before, I feel like my window is wide open right now, and I'm just looking for new opportunities to take advantage of what is exciting instead of what's not exciting. So you just need to change your focus.
That's interesting. Danny, what's your perspective?
Well, a payroll report came out literally yesterday, I think it was, where we had a net increase of approximately 270,000 increased jobs, additional people on payroll. Again, this wild another example of, oh wow, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
All right. At a time where you wouldn't think that, and the graph is really strange in many ways, right? I think we're going to see a modest softening of the labor market. It's going to provide more opportunities, especially for aggregators, to really help those the small businesses, the franchises, get those people into those positions, and do that more efficiently. I think we're going to see very attractive terms for controlling your own territory, controlling your own franchise. The franchisors do not want to see a slowdown in their ability to expand their brand rightfully. And at times when they're not completely sure about how that's going to play out, I think you could see very attractive terms for controlling maybe multiple territories, where it would have been a lot more difficult or a lot more competitive to do it when the economy was growing, greater than 2-3% GDP, et cetera. Now we're about 1%, right?
Right.
I think the franchisors kind of open up, so to speak, unique and different opportunities to get into a brand where otherwise investors or that business owner that wants to go into that franchise would otherwise be locked out of it, right? You have to qualify to be a franchisee. You have to buy a territory. You have to be worthy of that. And I think franchisors might think different and adjust how they are affording those opportunities or awarding those territories. And that's a wonderful thing to watch. And I think you could see new business owners do that, not necessarily because it's any bit easier to borrow capital, because it's innately more expensive, right?
Yep.
But they might be rolling over a 401k to make that happen, right? And not necessarily be completely concerned about the borrowing of capital when they have a unique opportunity to get into the franchise they might have been locked out of 2-3 years ago.
What's interesting is if you scroll through social media, you have all these gurus out there saying the sky is falling, the world's going to go, but you guys are like, and I'm actually the same. I think there probably isn't a lot of opportunity in real estate, like a pure real estate play. Like, I think that's hard right now, but I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. So if we're speaking to an audience of business owners right now, what's your best advice about what they can focus on now in order to find opportunities? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I mean, most of the people you see on Instagram and TikTok and all the great social media channels, it's just like the weather guy or girl. Nobody cares about weather unless you hear storm coming, right?
Yeah.
And they play that up. That's their moment to shine when there's a hurricane going on. Right? So, same thing right now. If you're talking on social media, you want to paint the picture that gloom and doom, because that's what people pay attention to. The negative
that gets
shit.
That gets eyeballs.
Right. Yeah. So I like to focus on what's great, right?
Yeah.
How do we take advantage of an opportunity that's awesome right now?
That's right.
Pick an industry that's awesome and let's start a company around it, right? My mentality is a little bit differently. I like to be happy and smile and don't really care about the bad stuff. So I would just suggest people to look at something that's exciting and that's flourishing right now and start a business around it.
Yeah, love it. Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, so sure. I guess I could answer it, I kind of provide a short story to you, because I agree wholeheartedly with Mark. A lot of times when we answer this, people could get concerned with the best of intentions and not understand those amazing opportunities, like we're talking about the franchisor opening up different territories so that they could continue to grow, right?
Yeah.
In unique times, etc. It reminds me when Mark was talking about the weather, and we only care when the weather's terrible, etc. I choose to be happy, and I choose to embrace change and learn from it. So, what's one of the topics that you can't have these type of answers and conversations on without bringing it up is the promise of AI. Now, when we look at AI and you hear about ChatGPT and the power of machine learning and what we've embraced over the course of 10 years with running National Alliance Sales on a platform as a service, you hear about the concern, Brave New World, the machines are taking over, right? And we don't want to, I'm so scared this thing could write an email for me, and I'm so afraid of what the future is going to be there. Yeah. And my answer, I think, hopefully, I think it's fairly consistent with Mark's, and just in a different lens, which is, I love this story, and it helps us. It acts as a catalyst to embrace change and to learn from companies or suppliers like Infiniti HR that have been adapting to this and utilizing that type of tech already to the advantage of our clients, etc. You don't need to be scared of something that you don't know. You have to be willing to learn, and to adapt to changing times. So, the story concludes like this. I found this story inspiring, and a lot of people, conversely, that were scared because it was so dramatic. The story of AlphaGo, Go, or also known as Wei Qi, the ancient Chinese strategy game. Google DeepMind created the artificial intelligence that offered to challenge one of the best to ever play the game, Lee Sedol, the grandmaster, to play against the machine.
Right.
Now, here's a man who is legitimately a genius. I think at the time his IQ was like they said like 150, etc. A man who can inspire people, and again, one of the best to ever play. Yeah. And the story concludes that he took the challenge to play the AI, to play the machine. And there's a piece in the story, and you can watch the documentary of AlphaGo as well. There's a part when Lee Sedol has learned, after playing a computer for hours and days, that he won't win, that the machine is faster and has already predicted not his next step, but his next 10 and 20.
Yeah.
And in that moment, right, you could see, just like any good competitor, you could apply this to your favorite ball player or favorite company, etc. That agony of defeat, that agony in his eyes that he knows he cannot win, right? And at the time, there were so many people, like Mark using the example of the weather, right? And oh my God, the world's coming to an end, and this epic battle, man versus machine, and man has lost.
Yeah.
And I looked at it as, you must be kidding. This is wonderful. This is inspiring. People create the machines, and people can help empower us to think different through those machines and help us live more efficiently and bundle types of wellness programs together and make these companies run more efficiently and help us think differently. Yeah. We don't go in our car to travel up here with a Rand McNally map. We don't buy our favorite music at shopping around Tower Records. We're not going to get that movie at Blockbuster Video. Those days are gone. That's not a bad thing, right? And when we embrace new technology, these things that can seem challenging or scary on the surface, it could help inspire us to be better and to understand that the world is what we make it. And why not be on the side of helping us be better and stronger and faster? And Lee Sedol was one of the first examples in this changing time where the machine is not just smarter and faster, but those types of examples can be applied to everyday life, everyday companies, when we're willing to think different. And if we're not willing to think different, then why do you want to fight a battle you know you can't win, right? Yeah. And that was Lee Sedol's story. So I found it inspiring. A lot of people were scared of it or upset or dismayed, and I thought it was a great example where embrace technology, I'm so proud that we've done this, and helps us live better lives, more efficient lives, and gives us an opportunity for introspection of what we do well and what we can do better.
We were at a conference and I met the founder of Quest. Like, he made a protein bar that actually wasn't sugary and is super, tasty. And he was explaining the future wearables. Like, he believes that our future in 10, 20 years will be intertwined with the machine, meaning we as humans will have implants in spots. So like, now we go to our phone and we ask Google, or we search for something. He's like, it's just going to be connected. And I'm curious what you guys, and I'm really curious what you guys think about that, because that's where this AI thing is moving. It's, we have the Apple Watch now, and it tells you all things like heartbeat, speed, all that fun stuff. But soon, this is going to be embedded in us. What do you think?
I think it's cool. I can't wait for the language thing where they inject you and you can all of a sudden speak German or
That's
Italian.
cool. Yeah.
I'm trying to speak Spanish now, and it's miserable. Yeah. So once that comes out, I'm getting it. That injection.
Yeah, why not? I think a lot of times it could seem super scary on the surface until we understand the practical reality of what it will do. It's like Mark and I were talking about this. I forget, how long ago, but the phone that we hold in our hand is smarter and faster than what your laptop was 2 years ago. And this phone that we hold in our hand today is a dinosaur in 6 months, right? And that's the way it goes. And that's not a negative thing.
It's
right?
Moore's law.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as we create, when we create other effects, when we create network effects, hub and spoke, we're talking about franchisors and franchisees, and being able to leverage technology to help the brands be more successful, create new brands that maybe are not even in existence yet, through AI, and empowering them with different types of solutions there. And whether that's implanting us with different type of gadgets or some other iteration of it. I think if we're always open-minded and we're learning and we're embracing change, I think that's usually the better side of history than being afraid of what we don't know and cursing the darkness and this is going to be doom and gloom. And when you see a tightening of the market, tightening of monetary policy, et cetera, those could be amazing opportunities that you see great brands, our clients, using to their own advantage, leveraging tech through us as a supplier in their own capacities, et cetera. And that's not a bad thing at all.
I want to switch gears. The fact that you guys are both family guys, own businesses, have epic lives. I'm just curious, how does all of that work? Like, how did you grow a business? How did you have a family? Obviously $1 billion in payroll is a big deal. And not everybody understands that path of being an entrepreneur. So I'm curious, like, how did you make it work? What's your keys to success? Just kind of give me some ideas.
Well, I have a different view on running businesses than most people. I'm very hands-off. I'm fortunate to have an amazing partner who enjoys being a CEO and likes to get involved in helping not only our clients, but also our internal clients, which are our employees.
Yeah.
So super blessed. I like to be the introduction person. There's a lot of great questions that go into my daily life that allow me to bring in folks that add value. Danny, when we interviewed with him 10 years ago, I kind of poke fun because it was actually him interviewing us to decide where he wanted to plant his next 10 years. And we're extremely grateful to have the opportunity to work with his whole division because it's been a game changer. So I think we just think differently with regards to relationships, with the way we grow our business. We had the fun component into our business and everything that we do. So I think that's, in today's world, people are focused more on the negative stuff, going back to the previous conversation, and we are super into fun. And then one of our core values is fun and adventure, and that is my most exciting core value. And we live it and we breathe it. And I think at the very core, My goal in life is to create smiles on people's faces. And I go into every situation with that mentality, because at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be thinking about how many accounts you brought on, or did you win that race, or the things that seem important. It's the conversations with your children, it's the conversations with your spouse, it's those amazing moments that you've created that at the end of the day are all about fun.
Danny, what about you? I'm curious, like how you blend business, family, work, fun. How does that work in your world?
So well said. When Mark speaks on this, and he's 100% on point, it provides me the opportunity for introspection and why we do what we do. The first answer to that question, I'm idiosyncratic. I'm somebody who always wants to challenge conventional theory and carve our own path together and dream things that never were. And that entrepreneurial mindset is the answer to that question. And that could be relatively unique. I think it's kind of an interesting type of dynamic of a person who wants to be able to be a contrarian and do it different, right? And when I think about our journey together, I remember turning to my wife. We were up Sunday morning, laid in bed. I turned to her as it came to me as arguably an epiphany. And I mean this as a point of introspection, where the hidden part of Mark's genius there allows you to get to this point, which is, wait a minute, I'm 46 years old. How come we don't have a kid? We're so busy changing the world, right? And we're so busy to that next race and the next win and et cetera, et cetera. And how come? How did that not happen, right, etc. I think when you're able to carve your own path, when you're able to be a contrarian, when you're a little bit more idiosyncratic, Mark's point, you see the forest through the trees in a big picture and try to instill a level of balance. You create so much more for the universe in aggregate, right? For happiness, for a sense of reward. Not just in our ability to compete and win, but in our ability to be able to look back one day, to his point, and to say, look, we did it our way. And look how much better off that, I took the road less traveled, right? And it was so much better that way. It gives us, I think entrepreneurs, by and large, would agree to this to an extent, that mindset. It needs to be innate there. And when we have a culture that really celebrates each other, fun and adventure is part of a scope of values, right? It acts as a catalyst to constantly, right, remind you of what's most important. And then we do that with our own clients, right? Or all the services that we're doing for you as part of that solution, right? So you could focus on what's most important, right? Your family and why you went into business in the first place and the memories that you could make. And let us get this burden, let us get these types of obligations off your plate. Focus on what matters. I think that also resonates with the aforementioned concept of millennials and Gen Zers, and to be able to focus on what matters most. That's a work in progress for me. I'm not as exceptional in it as Mark is, and I like being challenged, right, to constantly find that better balance, right. And I think when you share that mindset, right, then good things really tend to happen, and that's one of the topics that I think, with Mark's point, that we talked about over 10 years ago, right? Want to be able to focus more on family, creating my own family, etc. And now I was able to start one, and how wonderful is that?
Congrats.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so last question. I'm curious, what are some of the skills, beliefs, characteristics that have really served you over the years, really created this epic life that you both have? And it's just mostly so the audience has an idea of who you are and maybe what they can aspire to.
I would say the key component of my sanity is that I'm always honest with people. So I ask honest questions. I don't have a filter, which sometimes creates challenges for me, but I think I cut through a lot of the minutia of most people's lives. Maybe it's a shortcut to us never talking again, if you don't like me being honest. But I think that's one of my superpowers, is to be able to cut through the BS and create a conversation that you know where I stand, and I'm always going to be honest with you. So I think that would be my one recommendation for people, is just, if it's in your head, then lay it out there, because they're going to find out at some point. And if it turns out to be you covering up a little white lie or something like that, it usually doesn't go well. So just be honest with people.
What else?
I think just go out and take chances. And if I have a sign above my door, which I try to get my kids to embrace, and the sign says, "How did you fail today?"
Yeah.
We're so against the feeling of failure. And Tony Robbins talks about it. What's your biggest fear? Failure is usually number one.
Yeah.
And and I struggle with it sometimes too. I mean, I don't take every chance that I should, but I condition my brain to being comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's another value that I really place high on the chain, is that I always want to be uncomfortable, whether it be cold plunges or, going out with one of our partners to do a 20-mile bike ride when you're
The
like,
mountain.
why am I on this mountain?
Yeah, the mountain of death. Is that what you're talking about that we did yesterday?
And
Yeah, I
you
remember
get
that.
back and you sit by the pool and you're like, wow, I'm glad I did that. And you just get over that kind of mental annoyance of being uncomfortable. But if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, I think that will be a way where you can magnify your success in life. And again, when you're on that deathbed, you'll be really amazed of what you've accomplished.
How do you do the goal part of being an entrepreneur and like setting them, achieving them, being in relationship with others? I'm just curious about.
I'm old school Brian Tracy when it comes to goals. I write everything down. I have my notes section of my phone that I probably fill up once a day, and I try to get through everything on that list. Mm-hmm. And I'm constantly adding to it. So I have a bucket list like most people. The thing I think I do differently is when I accomplish a bucket list item, I think of another one. So I'm going to die with 100 goals on that list. Because it creates a fire within me that I always want to do more, and I always want to, experience life, and I think that's important.
Yeah, experiences are a big deal for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, Danny. What about you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to echo Mark's sentiments about of honesty. Being a tech geek, numbers never lie. Right? Mm-hmm. And we could say we don't believe 1 + 1 = 2, but it does in any language. And I think the answer provided before when you asked us about being entrepreneurs, that innate drive, that innate fire in your belly to make a difference, to leave the place a little bit better than the way you found it, to know that you are on a journey to fulfill your true potential. And sometimes we talk about this without actually living that, right?
Yep.
But it's something that I check myself on constantly. When I'm looking to fulfill our true potential as an organization, when it comes to winning for our organization, I tell our team we're going to be, with respect to competition, honest and unmerciful.
Yep.
We are going to make sure that we leave that all out in the arena, right? We're going to dare greatly, right? To Mark's point, this is an organization, these are mindsets where you're allowed to fail, right? If at the end, if you leave it all out in the arena, you're not just pointing from the rafters how the doer of deeds could have done them better, but you're trying to make a difference yourself and trying to find solutions to problems yourself, and you're trying to help others in that process yourself to make sure that you could increase the probability of fulfilling your true potential. When we're doing that, if you win, then you're going to know the triumph of high achievement, right? Yeah. And how wonderful is that? And if you fail, at least you fail while daring greatly, right? Mm-hmm. So your place is never with the cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat, right? Yep. I like that a lot. That also leads to a constant check on my part to remember that it's not just the victory that matters or the failure that matters as much as that my wife smiles when I come home, that I have a son that I could pass some lessons I hope can be valuable onto,
Yep.
that I could see that I could play a role to make sure that I could do everything I possibly can to help uncover his innate talents and help him make a difference. I like that very much, and I almost tear up a little bit when I think about these type of answers to a question, because when you combine an innate fire to make a difference, to fulfill your true potential and truly test yourself with it, and you're honest and unmerciful in that fight against competitors, and you're doing it the proper way while you having that level of introspection and looking big picture, it's a great place to be, I think, and hopefully a fair answer to the question. Yeah.
That's amazing.